They say some doors are locked for a reason, not to protect what's inside, but to shield the world from what's been hidden. For 17 years, I obeyed that unspoken rule. My husband's office remained untouched, sacred in its privacy. Even after his death, I let the key gather dust on the hallway hook. Michael's death was sudden. They called it a freak accident. Slipped on the stairs, cracked his skull, died instantly. The coroner used clinical language. The funeral director used soft words. I used none. I just nodded, signed, buried, and cleaned. But I never entered that room. At first, it was respect. Then it became dread. There was something about that door, always too quiet, too centered in the house. It had presence even when closed, as though it leaned forward, listening, breathing, waiting. On the 19th night after the funeral, I heard the doorknob turn. Not jiggle, not creak. Turn. I stood at the end of the hall, frozen. The hallway was dark, but the office door had cracked open by half an inch. No wind. No Ava. No logical explanation. My legs carried me forward before my mind caught up. The scent hit me first, metallic, antiseptic, stale. Like old wires and breath held too long. I pushed the door open. And there it was. A wall, no, a shrine. Every inch covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. Every one of them was of me sleeping. We lived in a house too large for 3 people. A pale gray Victorian with a porch that wrapped around like a question no one wanted to answer. Michael chose it. Said it had character. I always thought it had secrets. It creaked in corners I couldn't reach. Doors that stayed closed even in summer drafts. A home that watched us, not the other way around. Michael was a man of order. Everything in its place. Socks folded the same way. Knives arranged from shortest to longest. His toothbrush aligned to the edge of the sink. He maintained the home like a curator, but only his exhibit mattered, his office. That door was always closed, always locked, and yet somehow always present in the rhythm of the house. You noticed it the way you notice a ticking clock in an empty room. It marked time, not by movement, but stillness. I, Julia, had once curated exhibits in Manhattan, bold, messy, political art. I understood the power of rooms, of arrangements. Then I fell for Michael. Or maybe I fell into Michael. He was steady, deliberate, protective in the way people confuse with devotion. At first, I found it grounding. Later, I realized it was confining. I gave up the gallery, picked up PTA meetings and freelance catalog writing. Repainted rooms in muted shades. Edited myself down. I told myself I was becoming a mother, a wife. In truth, I was becoming background noise. Our daughter Ava came early. She didn't cry much. Didn't fuss. She watched. She scribbled endlessly in spiral notebooks with pages folded into sharp triangles. She tore corners off paper and folded them into little envelopes, placing them under her pillow. I once opened one. It had a stick figure with no eyes and the word blinking written in shaky pencil. I never opened another. Her teachers called her precocious. I called her watchful. I often wondered what she saw that we didn't. She began to draw floor plans. Not ones she was taught in school. They were maps of our house, but wrong extra rooms, odd angles. One had a staircase that didn't exist. One was labeled with a looping red line that circled the word trapped. I found her once measuring the hallway with a shoelace. She said it was too long from the inside. People admired our house. They complimented our marriage. On paper, we were enviable. We hosted. We smiled. We behaved. I arranged centerpieces while Michael grilled. Ava floated between us, barefoot, her notebook always within reach. But some nights, I lay in bed and felt like I was inside someone else's idea of a life. A life curated by a stranger. A still life. Michael kept his office locked. He claimed it was for client confidentiality, data security, corporate ethics. I never challenged it. Why would I? He brought home good paychecks and no drama. But the lock made a sound I memorized, a soft click, a barely there release of pressure. I heard it at night sometimes, when I wasn't supposed to. At 2:17 a.m. At 3:09. Then nothing. No footsteps. Just the silence of someone watching you sleep and choosing not to speak. I once asked Michael if he had trouble sleeping. He said, "No, I rest exactly as long as I need to." I didn't know what to make of that. Ava asked questions. Always Ava. "Why doesn't Daddy sleep on the weekends?" she asked once. I told her he did. She said she watched him standing at the end of the hallway all night. She said he didn't blink. That she counted. 47 minutes without blinking. Another time, she asked why Daddy had 2 shadows. I didn't know what to say. I told her not to be silly. Then she asked me why Daddy's smile didn't move his cheeks. I laughed, awkwardly, and told her he was just tired. But the question lodged itself in my mind like a thorn. One morning, I found her with her notebook open to a page of tally marks. Underneath, she'd written, "Awake while we're asleep." Every time. She stopped eating cereal. Said the milk made her see double. Said she dreamed of red blinking lights behind the walls. I started keeping the hallway lights on all night. I told myself it was for her. But it was for me. I began waking up in odd positions. Arms crossed over my chest. Pillows moved. Once I found my nightgown inside out. Another time, I woke on the floor next to the bed. I convinced myself it was stress. That grief was stretching my sense of time, displacing the normal. Then came the morning I woke up with the smell of antiseptic faintly clinging to my skin. It reminded me of hospitals, or server rooms, places that kept records of things better left forgotten. Then one night, I woke to find Ava standing in my doorway, holding a photo. Not a drawing. A photo. It was of me, sleeping. I asked her where she got it. She said it was under her pillow. I searched her room. I found nothing. But she looked at me, her small hands clutching the photo like a warning, and said, "I think he puts them there." I told her not to say things like that. But I didn't throw the photo away. I hid it. And I didn't realize how literal her monsters were. The office was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe the fear made it shrink. I stood in the threshold for longer than I realized, watching dust spin lazily in the air like ash from an old fire. The scent of antiseptic lingered, faint but unmistakable. The room didn't smell abandoned. It smelled preserved. Bookshelves lined the walls. At least, they looked like bookshelves. On closer inspection, they weren't filled with books. They held binders. Identical, matte black, each labeled by year in small white print. I opened the one marked 2011. My fingers shook. Inside were photographs, hundreds of them, slipped into protective sleeves, like evidence. And they were all of me, sleeping. Different beds, different rooms. My hair at various lengths, traces of aging on my skin. One photo showed me on a hospital bed. A wristband peeked from beneath the blanket. I don't remember being in the hospital. I opened another binder. 2017, more photos. And detailed logs beside them. Julia, 2:07 a.m., movement slight, dream state probable. Julia, 2:43 a.m., REM disruption, visual agitation. Julia, 3:12 a.m., stillness. Pattern aligns. Audio recorded. Each entry marked with timestamps, conditions, observations. I flipped faster. My name was always in all caps, underlined. Sometimes there were audio markers noted. Waking breath anomaly. Check voltage interference. The binders stretched across every year of our marriage. There was no gap, not even during Ava's birth. Especially not then. I stumbled back and bumped a small filing cabinet. It rattled. The drawers were labeled. Samples, hair. Samples, skin. Samples, nail. Inside were plastic bags, neatly arranged, each one labeled with date and type. My name, Ava's, even Michael's, occasionally. One drawer contained nothing but labeled memory cards. I didn't plug any in. I couldn't. There was a second desk along the far wall. Clean, except for a single notebook. I opened it. Drawings. Childlike, but not Ava's. Not quite. Something about the proportions, too precise, too clinical. One was of our bedroom, viewed from above. Another showed Ava asleep, the position exact. Some had me sleeping with a shadow standing nearby. Always in the same spot, at the foot of the bed, scribbled in the margins. Does she dream of it yet? Will she remember this time? Sequence breach at 3:14. No anomaly detected. I turned to the wall opposite the desk. A projector screen, blank. I pressed the switch. Footage. It flickered on. I saw myself, lying in bed, unmoving, the image pulsing slightly with poor night vision resolution. I blinked. The footage did not. The camera must have been embedded in the wall or the ceiling. Then Ava's voice. From off-screen. Daddy, why do you need so many pictures of mommy sleeping? Michael's voice. Calm, emotionless. Because sometimes we forget we were ever awake. I paused it. My hand trembled. The sound still echoed in my ears. There was a closet in the far corner. It had no handle, just a smooth wooden face. I pressed it, it opened. Behind it, another drawer. This one held locks of hair, braided, labeled by year. I turned away, bile rising in my throat. Then I felt a presence behind me. I spun around. Ava stood in the doorway, her expression blank. She looked at the footage, then at the walls, then at me. "That's the room from my dreams," she said. The camera in the corner blinked red. Still running. I smashed it with the heel of my boot, but the hum didn't stop. It was like the room itself was breathing, quiet, regular, and aware. There was no satisfaction in the destruction, just a deeper silence. When I returned to the living room, I noticed the digital picture frame Michael insisted on placing there had changed its cycle. The photos of family vacations had been replaced. The new images were black and white, grainy, almost like security footage. Every single one was of me. Some were clearly old, before Ava, before this house. I recognized the sheets from an apartment I'd rented briefly in college. Others were from times I should have been alone, hotel conferences, art retreats, gallery overnights. There were timestamps in the corners, all between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. The angles were unnatural, low to the floor, tilted slightly, as though from hidden cameras tucked in ventilation grates or smoke alarms. The distance suggested secrecy, not observation. These weren't photographs meant to document. They were designed to surveil. I unplugged the frame. It kept running. I yanked the batteries. The light faded, but the images lingered in my mind like afterburn on the retina. I wrapped it in a towel and shoved it in the back of a kitchen drawer. I didn't want Ava to see it. That night, the house groaned differently. The floors creaked in a rhythm I couldn't follow, like a language half forgotten. I lay in bed, unmoving, listening to the breath of the structure shift with the wind, only there was no wind. The air vents hissed. Not cold, just audible. I tried to distract myself. Climbed into the attic to retrieve some old boxes labeled wedding stuff and Ava baby. The dust felt heavier than usual, like it remembered things I didn't. Instead of photo albums, I found something else. A camcorder. Not ours. Old but clean, tucked carefully in a shoebox with no label. The plastic casing was warm to the touch. I brought it down to the kitchen and plugged it in. The screen flickered. It showed me, again, sleeping. The same position as always, curled on my side, one hand beneath my cheek. From an angle I didn't recognize. As if the lens had been embedded inside the wall. My hands twitched in the frame. My mouth moved slightly. Subtitles, written in pen on the bottom of the screen, read, "Unreadable speech, review required." At one point, my eyes opened. Only, I didn't remember waking. They stayed open for 10 minutes, not blinking, then closed again. In one section of the footage, Ava appeared. A much younger Ava, no older than 4. She stepped into the room on silent feet, staring straight into the camera lens. Her eyes were wide, her mouth moving without sound. Then she turned and climbed into bed beside me. I remembered none of it. Then the date stamp appeared. The year Ava was born. I ejected the tape and placed it on the counter like it might explode. That night, the thermostat reset itself to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 times. The following morning, I found my phone under the fridge. My messages were gone. The next night, I woke to the sound of printing. I followed it to Michael's office, even though the printer had no power source I could see. A single sheet of paper rested on the tray. It was a still from the video. Me, eyes open, staring at nothing. Ava, frozen mid-step at the foot of the bed. But the version printed had one difference. In the background, barely visible, was a figure. Standing in the corner. Watching both of us. No features. Just an outline. Almost human. Almost. My breath hitched. I closed the office door without removing the photo. Later that day, I noticed the mirrors had smudges. Not fingerprints, smudges. Oval shapes. Like someone had pressed their face to the glass from the other side. In the bathroom, condensation had formed a pattern during my shower. Perfect concentric circles across the mirror, evenly spaced. I didn't wipe them away. Ava stopped speaking entirely for 2 days. She took her cereal to the closet and sat there in the dark. When I opened the door, she blinked at me like she was trying to remember who I was. She whispered, "Something is walking through the walls." I didn't ask her to explain. That night, I found the attic light on. When I climbed the ladder, the camcorder was back where I'd found it. But the screen was cracked, and a new tape sat beside it, labeled, "Julia, Trial 4." I didn't watch it. Not then. Not yet. The steps beneath the office creaked in protest as I descended. 13 of them. The 13th step wasn't wood. It was steel. My breath caught when my foot landed on it. It reverberated like a drum, the sound too hollow, too calculated. The room below was not large, but it felt immense. There were no windows, only walls lined with soundproof padding. The lights flickered on without a switch, triggered by my presence. They hummed softly overhead, casting a sterile glow that reminded me of hospital wings and server rooms. This space wasn't listed on the house's blueprints. I checked after. It hadn't existed until it did. The air was clinical, cold, not just in temperature but in presence. It was the kind of air meant to preserve, not comfort. Against one wall sat a cot with a gray wool blanket, folded with military precision. Next to it, a tray with 3 bottles of water, all unopened, and a half-full journal that appeared to be tracking someone's heartbeat, breath rate, and pupil dilation. A desk stretched along the far wall. On it sat a monitor displaying static. Wires fed into it from all directions, tangled like vines in a forgotten garden. Under the desk, drawers, metal, labeled in Michael's handwriting. Samples: Ava, hair, skin, saliva. Samples: Julia, blood, fingernail, mucosa. Monitoring logs: dream interruption, vocalization index, REM deviation. I opened the top drawer. Dozens of small vials clicked against each other like teeth. Each vial had a date. Some went back to before Ava's birth. Others had red labels marked unstable. I found a cabinet embedded in the wall. Locked, but with a keypad. I tried Michael's birthday. It opened. Inside were 6 identical hard drives. Numbered, not labeled. And below them, a notebook. The cover read, Study 7. Prolonged involuntary lucid state. Subject Julia, primary. My name. Every page was filled with timelines, behavioral breakdowns, circadian rhythms, and what looked like emotional response graphs. I flipped to the final entry. Breakthrough imminent. Subject nearing threshold. Do not disrupt. Maintain passive surveillance unless sequence 5 reoccurs. The page was dated a week before Michael's death. In the corner of the room, I saw a chair, bolted to the floor. Restraints on the arms. Above it, a two-way mirror. Behind the mirror, darkness. Or something pretending to be dark. And there was something else. A humming frequency, low and pulsing, just beneath the range of sound. I felt it in my jaw. My teeth vibrated. There was a camera built into the corner, blinking red. I walked toward it. The light went out. On the desk, a small speaker crackled. Then Michael's voice, distorted, digital. You were never supposed to wake up in the middle. I ran. I didn't take anything with me. I didn't look back. I shut the office door and wedged a chair beneath the handle. That night, Ava didn't sleep. She sat at the top of the stairs, staring at the wall. There's something under us, she said softly. It doesn't breathe right. Neither did I. Because I knew she was right. It was an observatory. That night, the power went out, just in our house. Not a neighborhood outage. The neighbors' porch lights still glowed, the distant hum of their televisions bleeding through the still air. But our home went dark with intent, like something had pulled the plug from the inside. I lit candles. The flames leaned sideways, as if breathing in rhythm with something I couldn't see. They flickered toward the hallway, bending toward the office, toward the basement, toward the place beneath the place. The air thickened. I could feel it, heavy on my shoulders, coiled in my throat. I opened every window, but not a single breeze entered. Ava was already awake. I found her in the kitchen, barefoot, standing on a chair, arms raised to the ceiling like she was conducting something I couldn't hear. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated, too still. I asked what she was doing. She said, waiting for him to blink. My voice caught. Who? She didn't answer, just turned her head slowly toward the hallway. The lights came back on, but dimmer than before, as if filtered through layers of gauze. The bulbs buzzed. The hum from the basement, if it had ever really stopped, was louder now, more rhythmic. I checked the fuse box. Nothing tripped. When I returned to the office, the printer, a machine I had physically unplugged 3 days ago, was running. Paper spilled out onto the floor in a slow cascade. I approached carefully. They were photos. New ones. Of me. In the attic. Crying. My face distorted in motion, mouth open mid-sob, eyes red and wet. I hadn't cried like that in years. But I recognized the scene. It had happened 20 minutes earlier. I hadn't known there was a camera in the attic. I hadn't known there was still a camera in the attic. On the final sheet, someone had scribbled a word across my image in red ink. Complete. The printer shut down. I heard the internal motor click. Then silence. From upstairs, Ava screamed. I sprinted to her room. The door was closed. When I opened it, she was sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, whispering. Surrounding her were papers, dozens, none from my hand. All drawings. Each one of me. Eyes wide. Staring straight out. Mouth slightly open. On every version of me, the irises were filled in with ink. Solid black. On every version, someone had drawn faint silhouettes behind me. Shadow forms. Watching. I gathered them up. My hands shook. The paper felt oddly cold. Ava opened her eyes. "It's getting harder to stay awake," she whispered. "He doesn't want us remembering the middle parts." I asked what she meant. She only said, "You blinked." That's how he got in. That night, I placed chairs under every door handle, unplugged every appliance, broke the remaining cameras I could find. But when I woke up the next morning, all the chairs were neatly stacked in the kitchen. And my phone was in my hand. Camera app open. Still recording. We left that night. There was no plan. No suitcase. Just a jolt of instinct that clawed up my spine and told me if we didn't leave now, we wouldn't get another chance. I didn't tell Ava to pack. I just took her hand, and we walked into the cold, night-wet air without looking back. The house made sounds behind us, not the kind buildings make when settling. It was breathing, remembering, adjusting. Something about the windows felt alive, like eyes narrowing as we moved away. We drove until the fuel gauge blinked at me. A rest stop off Route 92. Fluorescent lights, vending machines, the stink of bleach. I locked the bathroom door and stared at my reflection until I could convince myself I still had one. Ava didn't ask questions. She sat in the passenger seat with her knees pulled to her chest, her hands pressed to her ears. She stayed that way until the sky turned gray. The next day, the house called. Not literally, but my phone lit up. An unknown number. No voicemail. Then another. And another. Always from numbers that, when searched, didn't exist. The call stopped after 17 attempts. That night, Ava asked me, "Do you think it's mad?" I didn't ask what it was. 3 days later, the house burned. The report said faulty wiring. An electrical short near the circuit box. Accelerants were ruled out. No foul play suspected. But I knew. The flames didn't consume it like a house. They consumed it like a body. Like something that had been waiting to die but refused to go quietly. The neighbors said it glowed blue before it caught fire. That the smoke wasn't gray, but silver. That all the birds in the trees left in silence and never came back. They called it a tragedy. I called it an exorcism. And when they asked if I planned to rebuild, I said no. I didn't need to. It's quiet where we live now. Ava sleeps through the night. In the beginning, I used to watch her until I was sure her breathing was steady, just in case something in her sleep shifted, like it used to. But she dreams differently here. Softer. Less vivid. Or maybe she just doesn't remember. I don't sleep much. I haven't since we left. Some nights I lie awake, staring at the ceiling and waiting for the air to change. Listening for the subtle hum that always preceded everything back in the house. There's nothing here, no clicks, no whirs, no static, but my body still braces for them. Like a muscle memory of dread. Sometimes I wake to my phone screen glowing. Open camera. Front-facing. Recording. Always recording. At first, I thought it was some leftover glitch. A corrupted app. Maybe I was still sleepwalking. I deleted the videos, every time. But each one ends the same way. My sleeping face. And a figure, reflected in my pupils. Michael. Smiling. I changed phones. Bought a new one. Fresh number. Clean slate. But the first night I charged it beside my bed, I woke up to find it open to the camera again. Recording. The footage saved automatically. That version was clearer. Like the lens was stronger. The reflection in my eyes wasn't Michael anymore. It was Ava. Or something shaped like her. She sleeps through the night, but sometimes I catch her eyes fluttering under the lids too quickly. Sometimes her fingers twitch like she's holding something invisible. She hums in her sleep now. A pattern. 332. I've considered running again, but I don't know where to. If the house was the beginning, I think this might be the middle. I don't think we ever really escaped. I think we just became the next subjects. And maybe Michael isn't watching anymore. Maybe he was only ever a part of it. And now I'm watching too. Not because I want to, but because I'm afraid if I stop, I'll miss the moment it fully takes her. Or me.